Call this meeting to order. Good morning, and welcome everyone to the September 2012 meeting of the Federal Communications Commission. Madam Secretary, would you please introduce our agenda for today?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to you, and good morning, Commissioners. Today's agenda includes 3 items for your consideration. First, you will consider a notice of proposed rulemaking to update, streamline, or eliminate Earth and space station licensing requirements, reducing regulatory burdens on licensees and accelerating delivery of new satellite services to consumers. Second, you will consider a notice of proposed rulemaking to implement an incentive auction of broadcast television spectrum. Third, you will consider a notice of proposed rulemaking that initiates a review of Commission policies governing mobile spectrum holdings. This is your agenda for today. The first item will be presented by the International Bureau. Roderick Porter, Deputy Chief of the Bureau, will give the introduction.
Thank you very much. Mr. Porter, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I'm happy to introduce the International Bureau's latest effort to update and streamline the rules that govern space station and Earth station applications and operations. The notice examines Part 25 in its entirety. It proposes a wide variety of changes that should make applications easier to file and easier to review, allowing for faster deployment of satellite services. Moreover, the proposals give stakeholders maximum flexibility in incorporating state-of-the-art technology into system design. In the course of processing and acting on thousands of application requests in the last few years, stakeholders have discussed with us various ways to make the process work better. At the same time, staff have taken note of improvements that we believe could be made. The draft NPRM before you is a reflection of these efforts. I'd like to thank our staff for the diligent work that they've done in this area in the last several years. There are far too many for me to name individually. And I'd like to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and your staff for the encouragement you've given the International Bureau staff to continue to look for ways to improve the process. Joining me at the table today are Robert Nelson, Chief of the Satellite Division, and Catherine Medley, Chief of the Satellite Engineering Branch. The item will be presented by Catherine. Catherine.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Today, the International Bureau is pleased to present a notice of proposed rulemaking that would undertake a comprehensive review of Part 25 of the Commission's rules, which governs licensing and operation of commercial satellites and Earth stations. This notice is the first thorough examination of the rules governing satellite services since 1996. Our efforts are part of the Commission-wide process to identify outmoded or counterproductive rules. The proposals in this notice advance the Commission's policy of providing licensees operational and technical flexibility while ensuring an operating environment free from harmful interference. We hope to improve our rules by eliminating unnecessary technical and informational filing requirements and promoting technology-neutral licensing. The review of Part 25 was initiated by Bureau staff and incorporates feedback and input by industry stakeholders. The notice proposes to streamline or eliminate over 100 rule sections or subsections. For example, the proposed changes would eliminate requirements to provide the satellite's physical dimensions and electrical power budgets. The notice also modernizes the rules to reflect advances in satellite technology, such as the use of steerable spot beams and variable size transponders. Moreover, the changes would reorganize and simplify existing requirements, such as by combining 7 different reporting requirements into one rule section. Some of the major rule changes proposed in the item include increasing the number of Earth station applications that would be eligible for routine processing, thus reducing the time it takes for applications to be granted. It would also reduce duplicative information requirements for space station applicants proposing multiple identical spot beams. Currently, applicants must provide beam plots for each spot beam. The proposed rule would allow applicants to provide a diagram for only one of the identical beams, and then a table or map showing the beam peaks for the remainder of the beams. Could also simplify technical showings required to be included in earth station applications by permitting them to submit either an interference analysis or evidence of coordination with adjacent satellite operators instead of requiring the submission of both showings. And as mentioned above, we would be shifting from a tell us how you built it approach to tell us how you avoid interference with your neighbors approach by removing unnecessary technical rules and application filing requirements. Lastly, we would consolidate remaining requirements for annual reporting while improving reporting of emergency contacts. This will greatly enhance our ability to reach out to our licensees in times of crisis or natural disaster. In summary, the proposals described in the Notice of Proposed Rulemaking will ease administrative burdens for applicants, licensees, and the Commission, which should result in faster deployment of services to the public, greater investment, and new innovations in satellite services. We request editorial privileges. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. And excellent work. Let's proceed to comments from the bench. Commissioner McDowell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm very, very pleased to vote to approve today's Notice of Proposed Rulemaking to streamline our licensing and operating rules for satellite service providers. At the outset, I congratulate and thank the team of the International Bureau for your dedication, creativity, long hours, sweat, and all the rest that went into this. Satellite technology plays an important role in meeting the communications needs of public safety entities, energy and enterprise businesses, and, of course, retail customers. Even in places where terrestrial wireless coverage is abundant, some consumers may remain unreachable due to challenging terrain, insularity, or both. Satellite services, on the other hand, have the technical capability to connect to consumers in these areas. Given satellite technology's growing significance in the communications marketplace, I expect that interested parties will greatly appreciate the fresh look and common sense approach we propose here today. In addition to seeking comment on issues of general interest, including reporting requirements, forms, and rain fade compensation, it's not every day I get to say that term, the notice literally sets forth in numerical order the proposed Part 25 licensing and technical rule changes and asks valuable questions about each one. One proposal is particularly noteworthy, at least to me, in seeking to modernize Section 25.114 of our rules. We acknowledge that today's state-of-the-art satellites employ spot beams. Specifically, we propose to streamline our current rule to allow applicants for space stations with large numbers of identical spot beams to supply antenna gain contour diagrams for one transmit and one receive antenna beam only. The good news is that this idea is a win-win-win, to use some English. Such a change will greatly reduce the burden on our FCC staff as well as the license applicants. The resulting double efficiency will reduce costs for both taxpayers and regulatees alike. Ultimately, these cost savings are passed on to consumers of satellite services. Thank you also to Chairman Janikowski for bringing this notice forward, and I also acknowledge the interested parties that assisted the IB team with this important effort. I'm eager to engage and to learn more in the coming months. Thank you again, and look forward to working with you on this matter.
Thank you. Commissioner Clapper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am pleased that the Commission is taking a comprehensive approach in updating its satellite service rules to keep better pace with the technological developments in the industry. Contained are a number of proposals that should improve the Commission's ability to assess the interference potential of proposed operators. Overhauling the requirements for annual reporting, licensing, and filing should lead to substantial reductions in the administrative costs that satellite service licensees must bear to offer services. This, in turn, should lead to greater investment in satellite services and enhanced benefits for consumers. I understand that the satellite service providers and other outside parties provided valuable insight to the International Bureau staff on the scope of the revisions that are listed in this comprehensive NPRM. Your continued engagement will be necessary to ensure that the rule changes we ultimately approve are as helpful as possible. I thank Mendel Delatorre and Rod Porter for their leadership on these issues, and I also wish to thank Gardner Foster, Bob Nelson, and Catherine Medley for taking the time to brief me on the item and for this excellent presentation.
Thank you. Commissioner Rosenworcel.
Satellite services provide vital communications links to the most remote regions of the country. They connect our troops around the world. They provide an important backstop for public safety communications when terrestrial networks are down. So I'm pleased to support today's notice of proposed rulemaking, which takes a fresh look at our satellite licensing and operating policies. In this notice, we seek to update our satellite rules to reflect new technologies, eliminate outdated reporting requirements, and streamline our licensing procedures. These are good things. They set us on a path towards speedier application grants, which will mean faster deployment of new services to the public and more opportunities for innovation and investment in the satellite industry. Thank you to the International Bureau for your hard work on this item.
Thank you. Commissioner Pai.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Opening a comprehensive review of our satellite licensing and operating rules has been a long time coming, as Catherine pointed out in her presentation. More than a decade ago, our biennial regulatory review process identified the need to streamline and revise our satellite rules. And this has become a regular refrain at the Commission, with recommendations to re-examine the rules issuing in 2005, again in 2007, and in a follow-up to the 2006 biennial review adopted by the Commission just this week. That's why I'm so pleased to join my colleagues and support this notice of proposed rulemaking, which opens up a plenary review of our licensing and operating rules for satellite service. As reflected in the notice, Commission staff have pored over literally hundreds of sections and subsections, provisions and sub-provisions. They have tried to find ways to harmonize conflicting rules, to delete provisions that are no longer in effect, and to ensure that the rules on the books conform to our practice. Now, to be sure, those happy few, that band of lawyers that already knows the rules and understands how the system works, may not benefit much from these cleanup efforts. But scrubbing the rules so that they are easier for companies, for startups, and for government watchdogs to understand is a valuable exercise in good government. I applaud Chairman Janikowski for his leadership in starting us down this path, and I thank every member of the International Bureau staff, Rod Porter, Catherine Medley, Robert Nelson, and others, who have dipped a laboring oar in these important waters. As we move forward with this proceeding, I hope we will hear back from stakeholders not only about the modifications proposed in this notice, but also about larger-scale reforms to our satellite licensing and operating rules. We propose streamlining a myriad of licensing and reporting obligations here, but we may also want to think about whether all of these requirements are necessary as a threshold matter. We propose consolidating rules that apply differently to different satellite operators so that they apply across the board. But we should consider whether these rules deter satellite operators from investing in and launching new satellites. In short, we should focus on a basic question. What steps do we need to take to make the United States the most desirable country in the world for licensing and operating satellites? I look forward to reviewing the comments of all stakeholders and the analysis of our expert staff. Thank you once again to the International Bureau, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The FCC and the satellite industry go back to the beginning, a long and successful innovation partnership. 50 years ago, in 1962, under Chairman Newt Minow, the FCC was instrumental in getting the first communications satellite licensed and launched into space. And since then, the satellite industry has become a critical piece of our communications ecosystem, employing almost 240,000 Americans, earning more than $175 billion in global revenues in 2011, We estimate that satellites send and receive today over 10 petabytes of data every day for commercial uses alone. Including government use, of course, the figure would be much greater. Satellites provide essential connectivity to the U.S. media industry, banking, retail, transportation, and other sectors. They provide international links for businesses as well as families, for our troops. They're an integral part of the global internet and cloud computing, and their ability to deliver communication service regardless of terrain or infrastructure is vital to first responders during emergencies and to connecting people in the most remote parts of America and the world. New satellite technologies are still being developed. I recently visited a new company in San Francisco working on incredible satellite innovations related to Earth observation. Yesterday, I met with Elon Musk, the founder and CEO of SpaceX, the company that's revolutionizing commercial space travel. FCC authorizations and licenses are critical to SpaceX. And in rapidly approving various applications, the FCC has played a positive role in SpaceX's early success. This is central to the mission of the FCC, and in particular to the mission of the International Bureau and its great work on satellites, facilitating innovation and the creation of new services and indeed new industries. And we'll continue to seize opportunities to modernize our rules and processes to facilitate U.S. leadership and innovation. Today, with this item, the FCC is proposing important steps consistent with these goals. We're proposing to modernize, streamline, or eliminate hundreds of rules or subsections governing satellite services. Among the changes, the notice includes a shift in the focus of the rules from a tell us how you build it approach to a tell us how you'll avoid interference approach. Much simpler, much more streamlined. It also includes an expansion in the number and type of licenses that can take advantage of routine processing. These are common sense changes to improve our rules, making them better for innovators, entrepreneurs, and new entrants, as well as existing companies. Core objective of our regulatory reform efforts. One of my first actions as chairman was to appoint a special counsel for FCC reform and charge her and our FCC reform team with conducting an agency-wide review of rules and regulations ripe for updating or elimination. Today at the Commission, each bureau incorporates these reviews on a regular basis into all of their planning as part of the Commission's efforts to promote innovation and entrepreneurial thinking. In addition to eliminating over 250 outmoded or unnecessary regulations since January 2010, we've repeatedly updated and streamlined rules to reflect new technology and promote more efficient decision-making within the FCC. Based on the incredible work of the FCC staff, no prior commission has a better record. We're all committed to smart and sensible regulatory reform, to removing unnecessary burdens and eliminating barriers to private investment, innovation, and competition. This notice is a terrific implementation of these important goals. I thank my colleagues for their support and input and engagement on this item, and Rod and all members of the International Bureau, Mindell de la Torre, who's out of the country today on important work, excellent work, and thank you. So let's proceed to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. So ordered. Thank you very much, and let's proceed to the next item.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, the next item on your agenda will be presented by the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau, the Media Bureau, and the Office of Engineering and Technology. It is entitled Expanding the Economic and Innovation Opportunities of Spectrum Through Incentive Auctions.
Gary, take your time. If you've gotten any sleep, we don't want to know. But take your time, but whenever you're ready.
Sir, ready. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I'm pleased to present the Incentive Auctions Notice of Proposed Rulemaking for your consideration today. The notice is an important step forward in implementing the FCC's vision in the National Broadband Plan and Congress's authorization of incentive auctions in the Middle Class Tax Relief and Job Creation Act of 2012. Incentive auctions are an important and innovative new tool in our search to free up spectrum for broadband use. I'd first like to recognize and thank my well-known colleagues at the table for this item: Julie Knapp, Chief of the Office of Engineering and Technology, Bill Lake, Chief of the Media Bureau, and Ruth Milkman, Chief of the Wireless Bureau. They did a great job leading their respective organizations and allowing this item to come together. I also want to recognize Bill Scher, Assistant General Counsel, who did a terrific job in the drafting, editing, and provided intellectual rigor for this very important notice. I think we do have slides. Yes, thank you. The U.S. is a world leader in wireless infrastructure and innovation. For example, the United States is the first country to deploy LTE networks and to enable unlicensed use of white space spectrum in the television bands. And our mobile app economy is the envy of the world. As you know, usage of U.S. wireless networks is skyrocketing, dramatically increasing demands on spectrum, the invisible infrastructure on which all wireless networks depend. The United States faces a major challenge to ensure that the speed, capacity, and ubiquity of our wireless networks keep pace with these demands in the years ahead. Meeting this challenge is essential to continuing U.S. leadership in technological innovation, growing our economy, and maintaining our global competitiveness. To meet this challenge, the Commission has made spectrum available for wireless broadband use through traditional approaches, such as auctions of cleared and reallocated government spectrum. It's also removed regulatory and other barriers to the use of spectrum, facilitated the deployment of wireless networks, and enabled more efficient use. The 2010 National Broadband Plan introduced the idea of incentive auctions. Incentive auctions, the latest in a series of world-leading spectrum policies pioneered in the United States, are a voluntary, market-based means of repurposing spectrum. They encourage licensees to voluntarily relinquish spectrum usage rights in exchange for a share of the proceeds from an auction of new licenses to use the repurposed spectrum. In February of this year, Congress enacted the Middle Class Tax Relief and Job Creation Act, which authorizes the Commission to conduct incentive auctions. This notice initiates the formal rulemaking process to implement the first incentive auction of broadcast spectrum. It will be the first such auction ever attempted worldwide, and will be a groundbreaking event for the broadcast television, mobile wireless, and technology sectors of our economy. It presents significant financial opportunities for many broadcasters who choose to participate, while we will ensure that broadcasters who remain on the air can continue providing the public with diverse, local, free over-the-air television service, including new innovative use of their broadcast spectrum. The notice is fact-based, data-driven, and represents the combined effort of the best and brightest at the Commission, including engineers, economists, technologists, and yes, even lawyers. We also have had the benefit of our world-renowned team of auction design experts, Auctionomics, Power Auctions, and Microtech. We're focused on serving as a resource to the broadcaster community as they participate in the comment process and consider whether to participate in the incentive auction. To accomplish this, the Commission is launching a new Broadcaster Learn program designed to educate and empower broadcaster decision makers. Now, turning to the notice itself, the first major section deals with auction design. The incentive auction of broadcast television spectrum will have three major pieces. First, a reverse auction in which the broadcast television licensees submit bids to voluntarily relinquish spectrum usage rights in exchange for payment. Second, a reorganization or repacking of the broadcast television bands in order to free up a portion of the UHF band for other uses. And three, a forward auction of initial licenses for flexible use in the newly available spectrum. Each of the three interdependent pieces presents a distinct policy, auction design, implementation, and other series of issues. To be successful, we must utilize an innovative auction design to ensure that all pieces work together. Our touchstone for designing the auction is clear. The reverse auction must be user-friendly, making it simple for broadcasters to participate. All complexity must be under the hood on the Commission side. The statute limits eligibility to participate in the reverse auction to commercial and non-commercial full-power and Class A broadcast television licensees. We ask in the notice whether to establish reverse auction bid options in addition to those identified in the Spectrum Act, including bids to voluntarily accept additional interference. The determination of winners in the reverse auction depends heavily on the second piece of the incentive auction, repacking. Repacking involves reorganizing the broadcast television band so that television stations that remain on the air occupy a smaller portion of the UHF band and enable us to configure a portion of the band into contiguous blocks of spectrum suitable for flexible use. The repacking methodology will be an essential element in determining which reverse auction bids we accept and the channel assignments of those stations which will continue broadcasting after the auction. In the repacking section of the notice, we ask about how to implement Congress's mandate to make all reasonable efforts to preserve the coverage area and population served of television stations as of the date of the Spectrum Act. The notice recognizes the importance of our repacking methodology. We recognize that in light of technical policy and novel auction designs, further evaluation is required. We intend to engage all stakeholders in this process in order to share ideas and information and to provide an opportunity for meaningful public comment. The forward auction will be more similar to prior FCC auctions, but with important differences. Its interdependence with the reverse auction and the repacking mean that we will not know in advance the amount of spectrum we can make available, the specific frequencies that will be available, and perhaps the geographic locations of such frequencies. Thus, the auction design must provide a framework that is flexible enough to accommodate varying amounts of newly available spectrum in different locations. We therefore propose an innovative band plan to accommodate the unknowns of the auction. The band plan is projected up on the screen. We seek comment on a band plan using 5 megahertz blocks. The uplink band would begin at channel 51 and expand downward towards channel 37 based on the amount of reclaimed spectrum. The downlink band would begin at channel 36 and likewise expand downward. We propose 6 megahertz guard bands between mobile broadband and broadcast services and propose to make this guard band available for unlicensed use. We also seek comment on alternative band plans and block sizes. In the notice, we seek comment on relocating the radio astronomy service and wireless medical telemetry systems now operating on channel 37, and on whether and how to address the post-auction availability of UHF band spectrum for fixed broadcast auxiliary stations, low-power auxiliary stations, and unlicensed wireless microphones. We ask how we should address the possible displacement of low-power TV stations. In the white space and unlicensed operations section, we propose measures that, when taken together, would make a substantial amount of spectrum available for unlicensed uses, including a substantial portion that would be available on a uniform nationwide basis for the first time. Television white spaces will continue to be available for unlicensed use in the repacked television band. In addition, we propose to make the guard bands in our proposed 600 megahertz plan available for unlicensed use, propose making channel 37 available for such use, and propose no longer reserving 2 channels for wireless microphones in the television white spaces. Throughout this notice, we also invite comment on goals and principles to guide our decisions. Our central goal is to repurpose the maximum amount of UHF band spectrum for flexible use in order to unleash investment and innovation, benefit consumers, drive economic growth, and enhance our global competitiveness. We expect to receive input from all interested parties while moving expeditiously. Our timing will be driven by our central goal. Our current estimate is that we will issue a report and order in 2013 and hold the incentive auction in 2014. And importantly, after the auction, we expect there will be a healthy, diverse broadcast television service. Before I close, I want to thank the whole incentive auction team, whose names are currently being projected on the screen. It's been lovely. If it weren't for this cross-bureau and office team, we would not be where we are today in proposing to initiate this important rulemaking. We request editorial privileges, and we look forward to your discussion.
Gary, thank you, and thank you so much for your work on this. Let's proceed to comments from the bench. Commissioner McDowell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'd first like to start by just thanking the entire team. You do have that Cecil B. DeMille-sized cast of thousands from Ben-Hur or something, and so it's not possible to mention everybody. But there have been cumulatively an uncountable number of hours, a lot of love, a lot of brainstorming put into this, and it will be, without exception, perhaps the most difficult undertaking the Commission has embarked upon since I got here, and I don't say that lightly. We went through the DTV transition, as both of you all worked on, or many of you worked on, And this is going to be that, but it's the analogy I make, it's like moving from two-dimensional chess to three-dimensional chess, and perhaps three-dimensional chess while blindfolded. So thank you all very much for all of your help, and this is just the beginning. So I'm going to thank you prospectively, too. But I am excited that our agency really is on the cutting edge of history. I also want to thank Chairman Janikowski for all of his vision and leadership and his willingness to accommodate edits and suggestions to improve the notice and to provide a meaningful opportunity for interested parties to submit comment in a variety of ways. We agree that working together is especially important given the unique characteristics and complexities of this project. There are many, many, many proposals and even a greater number of questions that are posed today. At this early stage, some ideas appear to me to be better than others, but we also realize it's early. And nonetheless, I'm pleased that we include questions designed to capture comments regarding all practical ideas, because we all simply do not know where the facts will lead us. We have completed our work at this stage of the process, and the time has come to seek comment from stakeholders on the myriad issues we have flagged thus far. As we move forward, I will follow a number of important ideas quite closely, and among them are, but by no means limited to, because we just don't have time. First of all, whether the proposed 5 megahertz channel blocks would result in a band plan that reserves too much spectrum for unlicensed use, contrary to Congress's explicit intent, or whether auctioning spectrum in 6 megahertz channels, that is, on a broadcast channel-by-channel basis, would be more intuitive and thus lead to a more efficient and fruitful auction. Whether the Commission will attempt to adopt rules or policies that run contrary to the directives of the statute, either directly or indirectly. Whether adopting 6 megahertz guard bands, as currently proposed, is necessary to prevent harmful interference given the technological improvements that may come over the horizon after we adopt rules. Whether the proposals for determining future broadcast channel assignments and reverse auction winners would result in a process that is as objective and transparent as it must be. Whether issues related to the coexistence of lower 700 megahertz A-block operations and those of neighboring TV channel 51 are resolved prior to the auctions. Whether imposing spectrum caps prior to the auction would exclude specific potential bidders, thus producing the net result of frustrating Congress's directive that the Commission attempt to raise at least $7 billion for a nationwide interoperable public safety network. And last but not least, and I'll leave the door open for many more, whether the Commission would be able to finish its work without undertaking a further notice and comment. This being literally, as I said before, the most complex spectrum auction in world history, and that is by no means hyperbolic, I think we should keep all of our options open, including measuring twice before we make the cut, as carpenters would say. As we know, the law mandates that the Commission accomplish a number of important goals. I've advocated that success will come more easily if we proceed with an eye toward regulatory humility, simplicity, and restraint. In the past, regulatory efforts to over-engineer spectrum auctions have caused harmful, unintended consequences. I remain hopeful that our new rules will be minimal, intuitive, and future-proof to pave the way for uses that we cannot imagine today as technology and consumer choices continue to evolve. We start a lengthy process today that is sure to be filled with many, many unforeseen twists and turns. So let's all be patient, persistent, and take your vitamins, please. Try to get some rest this weekend. I'm eager to contribute to the Commission's ongoing effort and will greatly appreciate the thoughts and insights of all involved. So thank you, good job, and off we go on this remarkable journey.
Thank you. Commissioner Clyburn.
We often speak about leaving this world and our country better than we found it, reducing the national debt, lowering our carbon footprint, preserving and striving for peace between nations, and so on. What we are affirming in this room today, improving our mobile and broadcast industries, I believe, should be added to the list. I have been hearing about the looming spectrum crunch for as long as I've been here. And even as a casual observer of one's surroundings, you can't help but notice that everyone we know and see in coffee shops, at sporting events, on subways, everyone is using mobile broadband for various purposes. This insatiable demand for mobile services forces the industry to work hard at ensuring that their networks can keep pace. Now we've reached a point where government can and must lend a constructive hand to ensure the platforms that many now take for granted keep moving efficiently. We'll keep quickly outraged when the smallest delay in service affects our experiences. And while getting angry at the GMV remains at the top of everyone's list, at least mine, being unable to log on to Facebook in a Wi-Fi hotspot is making a steady climb towards first place. However, we will not be able to take this giant leap forward without patience, positive engagement, and great assistance from the outstanding engineers and professionals in the broadcast industry. At the beginning of this process and during our early discussions on repacking and voluntary auctions, there was no small amount of anxiety from broadcasters. And while some anxiety remains today, as I have said all along, the word voluntary is the most important word contained in all of the pages that comprise this document. In the press release issued when the staff circulated this NPRM, Chairman Janikowski made 2 points I wish to underscore. First, voluntary incentive auction authority gives us the ability to strengthen both our mobile and broadcast industries. Second, to maximize the opportunities of spectrum, which this new authority creates, depends on the active engagement of the public and all stakeholders. Both points should be guiding principles as we continue in this proceeding. The incentive auction authority Congress gave us also presents novel challenges. The Commission must comply with the statutory language and carefully consider all relevant issues necessarily to properly design 3 key aspects of the unprecedented voluntary incentive auctions: the reverse auction, the repacking of remaining broadcast TV licensees, and the forward auction. Each of these has its own set of difficulties, so we need the engagement of all relevant parties to design the auction properly and make the most of this opportunity. Gary Epstein, Ruth Milkman, Julie Knapp, Bill Lake, Bill Scher, and others have made much time in their busy schedules to brief me on the NPRM and the incentive auction rules option attached to the item. I am confident that the staff is doing their best to provide parties with meaningful opportunities to participate in a process that can improve both the mobile and broadband industries. It is also clear that considerable time and effort went into trying to simplify the incentive auction process and removing as many computational challenges as possible for broadcasters who may be interested in relinquishing spectrum. If we need to make changes to add more clarity to the process, the staff has already shown that they are open to all recommendations. I generally support all of the preferred proposals in the NPRM, but there are a few I believe deserve special attention. I was particularly pleased to see proposals that would preserve sufficient spectrum for unlicensed operations. Promoting continued innovation in the unlicensed service industry is important to our national economy and to maintaining leadership in the mobile broadband services market. It is estimated that unlicensed spectrum generates between $16 and $37 billion each year for the U.S. economy. In November of last year, the Consumer Federation of America found that Wi-Fi offload resulted in wireless carriers not having to construct 130,000 cell sites. This resulted in annual cost savings of more than $25 billion. Finding sufficient spectrum for unlicensed services is also important to companies who have already spent considerable capital and other resources trying to develop networks and devices that comply with the TV white space rules we adopted in September of 2010. Successful TV white space business models increase the chances that some Americans who live in low-income rural and urban areas will receive the affordable competitive options for mobile broadband services that most Americans already enjoy. I was pleased to see that the NPRM seeks comment on small business bidding credits, which could create opportunities for small businesses to acquire wireless spectrum in the forward auction process. I also appreciate that we are seeking comment on whether those small business credits are sufficient to create opportunities for businesses owned by women and minorities. At most of my recent appearances and in meetings in my office, small business owners and prospective owners explained to me just how difficult it is to succeed in a down economy. And while the economy is rapidly improving, these innovative entrepreneurs and hard-working people find it nearly impossible to get access to capital or find worthwhile inroads to credit. What we do today will further assist us in realizing growth opportunities for these individuals. We should be very proud of that. Small businesses are the powerful little engines that run America, and I am glad to have a hand in their growth potential. I was also happy to see questions on what the Commission should do to ensure interoperability in the band plan for the forward auction. The current lack of interoperability in the lower 700 megahertz band is impeding the deployment of competitive options for consumers. To ensure that this incentive auction yields the greatest possible benefit for consumers, we must consider whether we should mandate interoperability in the spectrum we repurpose for mobile services. Thank you so much, Gary, for your presentation. I especially appreciate your efforts to identify each of the 70 staff members who worked on this item, even though I could not read all of their names. I wish to also thank and acknowledge the hard work of my wireless advisor, Louis Peretz. Thank you so much, Louis. You should all feel great today, for this is truly an impressive item. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Clyburn. Commissioner Rosenworcel.
Wireless services are revolutionizing the way we live and work. The number of devices using our airwaves is increasing at astounding speed. But this is more than the proliferation of wireless phones and tablet computers. Consider that within the next decade, machine-to-machine devices communicating wirelessly may number as high as 50 billion. The much vaunted Internet of Things is around the bend, and the ways we connect, communicate, and conduct our commerce will never be the same. So today, at the direction of a forward-thinking Congress, the Commission embarks on the complex but critical task of conducting wireless incentive auctions. Incentive auctions are a new tool that Congress provided this agency to address the near-term demands on our airwaves. If we get them right, we will facilitate the voluntary return of spectrum from commercial licensees and promote its efficient reuse. If we get them right, we will ease congestion on our airwaves and expedite development of new wireless services and applications. And if we get them right, we will drive digital age innovation, spur job creation, and grow the wireless economy. Past is prologue, but history matters, and I believe a brief recitation of where we have been with wireless auctions will help us understand where we are going. For nearly 2 decades, the Commission's path-breaking spectrum auctions have led the world. The agency has held more than 80 auctions. It has issued more than 36,000 licenses, and it has raised more than $50 billion for the United States Treasury. The Commission's simultaneous multiple-round ascending auctions have been a model for governments and commercial wireless providers across the globe. We are now again poised to be the world's pioneer. We have an opportunity to show that this new kind of auction, incentive auctions, can facilitate the smart and efficient use of our wireless resources. The right mix of law, engineering, and economics will yield not only more spectrum, but more consumer opportunity to benefit from a growing range of wireless services that will enhance our commercial and civic life. Today's notice of proposed rulemaking is merely the start. Big choices and hard work lie ahead. Yet going forward, I believe that there are 4 central building blocks to a successful incentive auction: simplicity, fairness, balance, and public safety. Simplicity is key. Incentive auctions are an undeniably complex undertaking. But at every structural juncture, I believe that a bias towards simplicity is crucial. Simplicity will yield more interest in the opportunities these auctions provide for broadcasters, and in turn, this will yield more spectrum. Station owners operating small and medium-sized businesses should be able to understand their options without hiring high-priced experts. Auction design is one component, but outreach to this community to explain this process is another. As a result, I have encouraged the chairman to develop material that describes in straightforward terms the proposed auction process and highlights for stakeholders the most relevant portions of what we produce today. I am convinced that the agency should also engage in more direct outreach through workshops here and outside of Washington. I believe that the chairman shares my concerns, and I thank him for committing to this kind of material and outreach. Fairness is essential. This is especially true with regard to the treatment of broadcasters that do not participate in the auction. Fairness demands that we consider how to accomplish repacking by minimizing unnecessary disruption and maximizing the ability of the public to continue to receive free over-the-air television. We must be faithful to the law, which requires efforts to preserve the coverage area and population of each licensee, as well as coordination efforts along the border with Mexico and Canada. At the same time, we ask that broadcasters make a fair assessment of the opportunities this auction provides the industry. By offering incentives to share channels and incentives to relocate from the UHF to the VHF band, this auction can mean new resources for broadcasters to develop new programming and deploy new services. These are propositions that can strengthen broadcasting by providing new models for ownership, by providing new funding sources for local content, and providing new ways to use technology to make more efficient use of our airwaves. Fairness also requires notice. So as I have said before, I would ask that the agency develop a timeline for all of its upcoming auctions. Balance is necessary. Heading into this auction, the Commission has a hefty task. It must balance congressional mandates with the intricacies of auction design. It must balance a range of industry concerns, and it must consider how consumers will benefit from the choices we make. This is challenging to do as these interests are intertwined, and if we are honest, at times in tension. As a result, we need a holistic approach. The sum is greater than the parts. None of the 3 legs of this endeavor, the reverse auction, the repacking, or the forward auction, can stand on its own. For instance, the interference rules we consider will not only impact broadcast services, but also how much spectrum will be available for auction, which in turn will impact the revenues raised. Balance also requires attention to licensed and unlicensed spectrum. The former provides reliability and interference protection. The latter provides low barriers to entry and promotes the efficient use of limited resources. Good spectrum policy requires both. As noted above, the Commission's prior auctions for licensed spectrum have yielded more than $50 billion in revenue. But it is important to keep the broader economic picture in mind. If you have ever used a Wi-Fi connection to get online, and if you have ever used a television remote control to turn on the game, or a garage door opener when you get home, you have benefited from the use of unlicensed spectrum. In fact, unlicensed spectrum, as my colleague Commissioner Clyburn stated, generates between $16 to $37 billion annually for the U.S. economy. Moreover, unlicensed spectrum is an important tool for relieving congestion on commercial wireless networks. Today, more than 1/3 of data traffic is offloaded onto Wi-Fi networks. To this end, I am pleased that the Commission asks how to best utilize unused spectrum in the current broadcast television bands for unlicensed operations. In our increasingly mobile and connected world, a balanced approach that includes both licensed and unlicensed spectrum is the key to unlocking the full economic benefits of wireless broadband. Finally, public safety is fundamental. We must remember that the Middle Class Tax Relief and Job Creation Act has incentive auctions that are part and parcel with enhancing public safety. This legislation has purposes that are broader than those tasked to this agency. The auction revenues the Commission raises are designated to support the first nationwide interoperable wireless broadband public safety network. After far too many years, we are at long last beginning to address the 9/11 Commission's call to enable communications connectivity among local, state, and federal first responders. The auction revenues also contemplate funds for public safety research, support for next-generation 911 service, and deficit reduction. We cannot divorce the choices this agency makes in developing these auctions from the broader purposes in this legislation and the public safety needs of the American people. So these are the values that will inform my thinking about these auctions. Simplicity will yield more spectrum opportunity. Fairness is essential in our treatment of broadcasters. Balance is required in our approach to the law and in the mix of licensed and unlicensed opportunities. And public safety is fundamental. But of course, we also need to remember that it is consumers who must emerge as the real beneficiaries of this auction. As President Obama has stated, expanding wireless broadband access will trigger the creation of innovative new businesses, provide cost-effective connections in rural areas, increase productivity, improve public safety, and allow for the development of mobile telemedicine, telework, distance learning, and other new applications that will transform Americans' lives. Amen. Let's get to work. Thank you to the many individuals throughout the agency who contributed to this effort, quite literally armies of experts. Thank you to the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau, the Media Bureau, the Incentive Auction Task Force, the Office of Engineering and Technology, and of course the General Counsel's Office for your work for this item and also your regular willingness to brief me on, to speak to me about this important issue and also allow me to pepper you with questions large and small. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Pai.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In 1939, Winston Churchill famously described Russia as a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma. 73 years later, I believe that this is an apt description of the challenges we confront in implementing our legal obligation to hold incentive auctions. It has often been said, and has been said here this morning, that this will be among the most complicated set of auctions ever held by any country. In fact, it has been repeated so often that it probably has become a cliche. But this Notice of Proposed Rulemaking, or NPRM, makes clear the magnitude of the task in front of us. There are many pieces of the puzzle that have to fit together for this enterprise to end in success, including a reverse auction, a forward auction, and a repacking plan. Doing any one of these things individually would be a significant undertaking for the Commission. Doing all of them in conjunction is a daunting proposition indeed. If we make the right decisions, each piece of the puzzle will fit together seamlessly. We will free up badly needed spectrum for mobile broadband, which will promote infrastructure investment, job creation, and economic growth. We will preserve a vibrant and free over-the-air broadcast service, including by providing needed funding for those that wish to stay in broadcasting but choose to channel share or to move to VHF or very high-frequency spectrum. And we will help to raise financial resources that will aid the construction of a nationwide public safety broadband network, reduce the federal budget deficit, and advance next-generation 911 service. If, on the other hand, we do not get this right, we could end up with a complicated model that will not yield the desired results. Fortunately, the Commission has assembled an immensely talented team to work on this proceeding. They have put in excruciatingly long hours to produce this NPRM, and I would like to thank each of them for their service, starting most obviously with those presenting today, Gary, Julie Knapp, Bill Lake, and Ruth Milkman. In particular, given my past work in the Office of General Counsel, I would like to recognize Bill Scher for his leadership on this project. Based on my prior experience with Bill, I know two things about him. First, as a lawyer and as a friend, he lives up to the credo of Omar, a character on our mutually favorite show, The Wire. A man's got to have a code. Second, he always conducts himself with distinction, and it is therefore no surprise to me that he did that in the course of this item. So thank you, Bill, for your efforts. But yeoman staff effort alone will not be enough to produce rules that will yield a successful incentive auction. Rather, it is critical that we receive a wide range of input from all affected stakeholders. Given the complexity and prominence of this matter, rarely has the comment part of notice and comment rulemaking been more important. How will the proposals that we are making today work in the real world? Are there alternatives that will lead to a more successful outcome? You need to tell us, and we need to listen. This morning, I will vote to approve in part and concur in part with this NPRM. As it suggests, I agree with some proposals contained in this item, and not necessarily with some others. But I think we all agree that today's NPRM serves as an invaluable starting point for an important public conversation. It frames numerous issues for discussion and commences a rulemaking process that we are compelled by law and by the marketplace to launch. Unfortunately, this NPRM does not ask all of the questions that I believe need to be asked. I appreciate the willingness of my colleagues to include some of my suggestions in the NPRM, but I am disappointed that this item does not include other critical questions that I believe we must pose. I will therefore ask them here in the hope that parties will respond to them in the record. And to aid me in this effort, I have a very advanced PowerPoint which combines the flash of an Edsel with the sizzle of new Coke, I think. First, the forward auction as proposed stops as soon as it generates proceeds sufficient to pay successful bidders in the reverse auction, to cover the Commission's administrative costs, and cover the estimated costs of reimbursements as required by the statute. This is essentially like ending a traditional auction as soon as the reserve price is met. In other words, the NPRM could contemplate an auction with no net revenues. This would mean no money for the First Responder Network Authority, or FirstNet, to build out a nationwide interoperable public safety broadband network. No money for state and local first responders. No money for public safety research. And no money for deficit reduction. Finally, no money for next generation 911 implementation. And I mention these items because Congress mentioned each of them in the Spectrum Act, which makes it difficult to square that legislation with an auction that yields no net revenues. I thus ask stakeholders how we can amend the auction design and incorporate closing conditions that might maximize the net revenues raised by the auction. For example, traditional auction theory suggests that an auction should remain open until no bidders come forward. And that's because, of course, ending an auction while there are still willing bidders might allocate spectrum to bidders who value it less and leave revenues on the table. How can we design the auction so that it does not close prematurely? Second, turning to the Broadcaster Relocation Fund. The Spectrum Act provides that non-participating television broadcasters and cable operators must be compensated for costs incurred during the repacking process. At the same time, it limits the Broadcaster Relocation Fund to $1.75 billion. The NPRM acknowledges that this fund may be insufficient to compensate broadcasters and cable operators for the reasonably incurred costs, but it does not seek comment on how this limitation affects when we will close the auction. So, I will ask, does the Spectrum Act require us to include this limitation as a closing condition? If not, should we require that the estimated cost of repacking for television broadcasters and cable operators be less than that sum as a closing condition? Either way, what impact, if any, would such a condition have on the efficiency of the broadcast incentive auction? Third, turning to guard bands. I do hope that stakeholders will help us flesh out the appropriate size of guard bands. I agree with the NPRM that 6 megahertz guard bands are sufficient to shield against interference between television broadcasting and the wireless services using long-term evolution, or LTE, that are likely to be offered using this newly licensed spectrum. But 6 megahertz may also be more than sufficient given the power and out-of-band emission limits that we place on this newly licensed spectrum, not to mention the availability of improved filters. This is important because the Spectrum Act, which governs our efforts here, directs, and I quote, that guard bands shall be no larger than is technically reasonable to prevent harmful interference between licensed services outside the guard bands. So, I think we have to ask the obvious question: would a smaller guard band be technically reasonable? For example, would a 5 megahertz or 4 megahertz guard band suffice? And if so, would adopting 6 megahertz guard bands run afoul of the Spectrum Act? Fourth, an additional topic on guard bands. The NPRM assumes that we do not need to license and auction the guard bands, but I'm not sure whether this is consistent with the Spectrum Act. At several points, the Spectrum Act appears to contemplate that all reallocated spectrum will be licensed and auctioned. Our General Incentive Auction Authority, for example, only lets the Commission, and I quote, encourage a licensee to relinquish voluntarily some or all of its licensed spectrum usage rights in order to permit the assignment of new initial licenses. Our Broadcast Incentive Auction Authority is a subset of that authority, and it allows us to share proceeds with broadcast licensees, quote, in order to make spectrum available for assignment through a system of competitive bidding. Similarly, the Spectrum Act requires a forward auction in which, and I quote once again, the Commission assigns licenses for the use of the spectrum that the Commission reallocates. Do these provisions require the Commission to license and auction all spectrum reallocated from the television broadcasting service, including guard band spectrum? What would the value of the guard band spectrum be if licensed and auctioned? Now, on the other hand, the Spectrum Act also states that we, and I quote, may permit the use of such guard bands for unlicensed use. Is that provision best read as allowing the Commission to authorize unlicensed use of guard bands instead of licensed use? Or is there another way to reconcile these provisions? Perhaps by licensing and auctioning the guard bands, but allowing unlicensed use therein on a non-interfering basis? Could we license the guard bands and auction it to a band manager for unlicensed use? If we must comply with a license and auction requirement, are there other means to encourage flexible, unlicensed use of the guard bands? Fifth, channel sharing. I hope stakeholders will help us explore alternative approaches to channel sharing. For example, should we require all parties to a channel sharing agreement to file pre-auction applications and participate in the auction? This would allow each party to submit its bids for sharing, which may reduce the need for pre-auction negotiations on the precise value of sharing for each party. Under our current rules, which prohibit communications at this stage, negotiations may be difficult. And since reverse auction participants could be expected to incorporate any relocation costs into their bids, it may increase the transparency of the repacking process by allowing the Commission to better understand the total cost of a particular channel sharing agreement. On the other hand, requiring both parties to participate with potentially differing bids may make a descending clock auction more difficult to implement. So I would like to know, what does the public think are the costs and the benefits of this option? And are there any other issues that we should consider regarding channel sharing agreements that may affect who should apply to participate in the reverse auction? On a related note, I wish the NPRM had raised the question of whether we might encourage channel sharing by low-power broadcast stations in markets where they're likely to be displaced. Although such sharing may not be an option if, for example, two low-power broadcasters operate in different geographic areas, it seems like a worthy question to ask. Sixth, turning to translators. I would have preferred that the NPRM had more directly addressed the unique situation that translators face. These low-power television stations convey broadcasts to rural communities that otherwise would be unserved. What can we do within the constraints of the Spectrum Act so that this vital communications link for rural America is not broken? Seventh, and I promise finally, time frame. I wish the NPRM had sought input on a realistic schedule for completing this proceeding. For example, in order to begin the incentive auction by June 30th of 2014, which I believe should be our goal, by when do we need to issue final rules and auction procedures? If we develop a timetable for completing each of the steps that must be taken prior to the incentive auction, there's a much greater chance that we will make progress in a timely fashion. These are just a few of the questions that I wish had been asked. But I would be remiss not to mention items I proposed that the NPRM does include, and for which I thank the chairman and my colleagues for agreeing to. Most notably, questions about relocating Channel 51 broadcasters, bidding on specific frequencies, prioritizing paired spectrum, complying with potentially conflicting securities laws, and generally simplifying the incentive auction. I view all these questions as part of a larger challenge. How do we ensure that all wireless providers, including small businesses with limited experience in complicated auctions, have a full and fair opportunity to participate? In the final analysis, the questions we pose and the proposals that we make in today's NPRM are important, but they are not as important as the feedback that we will receive. If the incentive auction is going to be a success, then we need to listen to the input of stakeholders and not be wedded to all of the proposals that we make today. And we also can't be afraid of asking the hard questions. While there are plenty of challenges in front of us, I remain optimistic that we can conduct a successful incentive auction. And as we go forward in this proceeding, I believe that there are 4 simple principles that will be critical to our success. First, we must be faithful to the statutes passed by Congress. It is our job to implement this legislation, not to rewrite it to conform to our own policy preferences. Second, we must implement the law in a manner that is fair to all stakeholders. This is especially important because the incentive auctions will not be a success unless both broadcasters and wireless carriers choose to participate. Third, we need to keep our rules as simple as possible. The incentive auction process is going to be inherently complicated, and we shouldn't introduce unnecessary complexities if we can help it. Rules that are perfect in theory may turn out differently in the real world if market participants don't understand them or don't like them. And fourth, we need to complete this proceeding in a reasonable time frame, as I discussed. Prolonging uncertainty for broadcasters isn't in their interest. And since we haven't conducted a major spectrum auction since 2008, there is an urgent need to make additional spectrum available for mobile broadband, as the chairman eloquently and repeatedly has made clear. So I'll end, as I began, with a quote from Churchill, one that I think sums up where we find ourselves today. This is not the end. It is not even the beginning of the end, but it is the end of the beginning. With this morning's vote, we complete the first step in the rulemaking process. This is a significant accomplishment, but the hardest work remains ahead of us. I look forward to joining with the chairman, my fellow commissioners, and the diligent commission staff in the time to come in pursuit of our common goal. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Gary and Julie and Bill and Ruth, everyone who's been involved in this is a big deal. Today, the U.S. becomes the first nation in the world to launch incentive auctions, a new paradigm and spectrum policy that uses market forces to repurpose beachfront spectrum for licensed and unlicensed wireless broadband. The world is watching. As Japan's Nikkei Weekly wrote recently, Japan can learn from the incentive auction system adopted by the U.S. government. In this flat, competitive world, capital and talent can flow anywhere. We're in a global bandwidth race. It's similar to the space race in that success will unleash waves of innovation that will go a long way toward determining who leads our global economy in the 21st century. Because of innovative American companies and entrepreneurs and smart government policies, the U.S. has regained global leadership in mobile over the past few years. Incentive auctions will help keep us there. They'll help ensure the U.S. has world-leading wireless networks, that we have the mobile bandwidth we need, that we build and maintain a strategic bandwidth advantage, that we keep and extend our edge in mobile innovation, and that we improve coverage and service quality for wireless consumers throughout the country. The FCC has a proud history of world-leading spectrum policy innovations that have unlocked massive benefits for consumers and our economy. We're the agency that developed and implemented spectrum auctions, as you've heard, conducting over 80 auctions, raising more than $50 billion for the Treasury, and helping generate the robust and now world-leading mobile market that we have in the U.S. When we first introduced the incentive auction idea in 2010 as part of a strategy to address the spectrum crunch, one initial reaction was the idea won't go anywhere. Not in this town, not at this time. But less than 2 years after the idea's formal introduction in the FCC's National Broadband Plan, incentive auctions have gone from idea to law. President Obama, from the beginning, displayed strong leadership on the mobile opportunity for our country, for innovation and economic growth, and made incentive auctions a priority. And Congress, to its credit, overcame strong differences to enact a bold law. While many people would have written the statute differently, I commend the leadership of both parties, particularly of the Senate Commerce Committee and House Energy and Commerce Committee, for their hard work and commitment to action. And our duty and intention is to faithfully implement the law, freeing up spectrum, raising very substantial revenue, and helping fund FirstNet, the broadband public safety network for our first responders. Today, the FCC formally launches this effort with a strong, thoughtful, thorough, and path-breaking proposal. And we anticipate conducting the world's first incentive auction in 2014. Now, when the idea was first proposed, again in 2010, the second reaction from some quarters was, there's no spectrum crunch. Today, virtually everyone confirms what we said at the time, the vital need to free up new spectrum, because demand is rapidly exceeding supply, and it's not going away. U.S. mobile data traffic grew almost 300% last year, and driven by 4G LTE smartphones and tablets, traffic is projected to grow an additional 16-fold by 2016. And I'll tell you that every projection we've seen since we started this has been exceeded by actual events. The spectrum crunch is a major looming headache for consumers who would have to deal with dropped connections even beyond what's experienced today, or spinning pinwheels when they're checking the web on the go. And it would be a headache for U.S. innovators and network operators. One of the ways in which we're now leading the world is in deployment of the next generation wireless broadband network, 4G LTE, at scale. With more than 2/3 of the world's LTE subscribers, the U.S. is the global testbed for 4G apps and services. But we won't be able to seize the opportunities of this early advantage without taking care of our invisible infrastructure, wireless spectrum. To realize the promise of incentive auctions, our single biggest initiative, but certainly not our only one, to free up beachfront spectrum and address the spectrum crunch, our work in this proceeding will be guided by a set of core goals and principles. Maximizing the amount of spectrum freed up for flexible use, both licensed and unlicensed. Maximizing broadcaster participation in the auction, including by making the auction process as transparent and simple and easy to understand as possible. We'll keep a firm focus on the engineering and the economics. This will be a fact-based, data-driven proceeding to implement the statute drawing on the expertise of the world's leading economists, leading auction design experts and engineers, both inside and outside the agency. We'll recognize the need for humility. This is, as you've heard, an incredibly fast-moving space and an extremely complex policy initiative. We're committed to engaging with all stakeholders on all topics, learning from the public record we'll be building, aiming for simplicity, and adjusting our proposals as necessary to ensure that the auction succeeds. And will remain throughout this proceeding committed to U.S. leadership in mobile infrastructure and innovation. We intend to implement incentive auctions consistent with these goals and principles within the constraints imposed by the Spectrum Act and recognizing Congress's objective of funding a FirstNet broadband network for our first responders. It won't be easy, but today's important proposal puts us well on our way. The new incentive auction concept poses a long list of new challenges, but this proposal already makes clear that smart and elegant solutions are possible. The proposals on auction design and band plan demonstrate this. The proposed band plan consists of 5 megahertz building blocks to allow for the greatest amount of flexibility and efficiency, including allowing for additional downlink blocks that could be auctioned on an unpaired basis. In developing this proposal, and this is just one of many groundbreaking policy innovations in the proposal, in developing this, we're optimizing for the new mobile data world. We see opportunities here as well as challenges. Opportunities for a next-generation band plan, one that can serve as a model for the world and advance the goal of internationally harmonized spectrum. In addition to unleashing licensed spectrum, we also propose to free up a significant amount of unlicensed spectrum for Wi-Fi-like uses. Today's proposal would create the world's first nationwide unlicensed spectrum band suitable for robust wireless broadband on contiguous low-band frequencies. Now, surprisingly, there's been some disagreement on this, but this is a time to be embracing and extending Wi-Fi-like uses of spectrum as we take unprecedented steps to free up very substantial amount of spectrum for licensed use. Unlicensed spectrum has a powerful record of driving innovation, driving investment and economic growth, hundreds of billions of dollars of benefit to our economy and consumers. Why would we turn our back on Wi-Fi-like innovation, particularly when we can unleash both licensed and unlicensed spectrum for innovation? Along with licensed spectrum, unlicensed spectrum has proven to be a vital part of today's and will be a vital part of tomorrow's spectrum ecosystem. A balanced approach makes sense for our country, and it's what the Spectrum Act contemplates. We estimate that over a third of mobile traffic will be offloaded to Wi-Fi by 2016 as carriers increasingly develop new methods to manage capacity on their networks. People depend on unlicensed spectrum every day to connect wirelessly to their home and business internet networks, to stream news and movies onto their tablets, to connect their hands-free Bluetooth devices, to monitor inventorying U.S. RFID tags. We've made together at the Commission important strides already on freeing up in the last 2 years more spectrum for white spaces in the last 25 than we've seen in the last 25 years. Our proposal on unlicensed spectrum will create a powerful new platform for innovation, a world-leading platform when many other countries are actively working to leapfrog the U.S. So this together, the unprecedented proposal to free up beachfront spectrum for licensed use, to make a major difference for our licensed carriers and for the mobile marketplace, and this major innovative proposal on unlicensed use is a big win for innovation, a big opportunity for our country. I'm proud that we're moving forward to seize the opportunity, and I look forward to input from all stakeholders on all aspects of this proposal. Incentive auctions are also an opportunity for broadcasters, both those that will take advantage of a once-in-a-lifetime financial opportunity, and those that will choose to continue to be part of an even healthier broadcast marketplace. And broadcasters will also reap benefits from a more robust mobile ecosystem. In fact, broadcasters are uniquely positioned to benefit from mobile broadband because of their focus on video creation. I hear from more and more broadcasters that seek to reach their audience wherever it is. A headline at this year's NAB show said it well: "Convention embraces multi-platform world." And from my own experience in both broadcasting and internet businesses, I couldn't agree more with this approach. Both will remain essential, the broadcast distribution channel and now the mobile distribution channel for broadcasters and all creators of video content. Robust mobile networks will help broadcasters deliver and monetize their content on tablets and other mobile devices. Because of their experience with video, as I said, broadcasters are in a great position to lead content into the 21st century, and incentive auctions will help. We're committed to outreach and education to all broadcasters, including through our new Broadcaster Learn program, which is designed to inform and empower broadcaster decision makers as they participate in our comment process and consider the business decisions that incentive auctions create. I appreciate the suggestions from my colleagues for concrete ways to implement that, developing materials for broadcasters, and we intend to move forward on that. Now, as I mentioned, a key goal of our auction proposal is simplicity. We'll continue to work with broadcasters, wireless carriers, and all stakeholders to improve the proposal and put in place the most effective auction design ever developed. We'll also continue the important work in the context of broadcasting to promote a healthy marketplace and a diverse marketplace. Now, incentive auctions are critical. Of course, they're not the only tool we're using to address the spectrum crunch. Today is not the day to review all of the efforts that we are together taking to free up spectrum for mobile broadband, but I look forward to working with my colleagues on a long series of initiatives. I'm looking at Ruth and Gary and Bill and Julie. Let's see, 3 of us were here at the FCC in the 1990s when the first auctions were developed, and Bill and Gary, you were very active in the community, engaged with these issues. I remember the initial skepticism about auctions in general and the possibility of designing auctions that would meet the goals. I remember the original auction design, a simple oral outcry auction like a cattle auction. And I've seen the amazing things that have happened as it's developed under the just amazing work by the FCC staff, the auctions team, the Wireless Bureau, OET, the General Counsel's Office, and a lot more, to what has become sophisticated, computer-driven, simultaneous, ascending auction formats that have become the model not only for incentive auctions around the world, but other auctions as well. There were others who participated in the effort in the 90s, Evan Quirrell, Greg Roston, Paul Milgram, many of the original soldiers are back at work on this effort, and while the challenges are incredibly complex and difficult, the history gives me real confidence. Now, innovation requires risk-taking and new thinking. I challenge all stakeholders to approach the creation of these new incentive auctions with the same daring spirit that led to the creation and implementation of the original spectrum auction 2 decades ago. Let me join my colleagues in thanking all of the many names who worked on this. This has been an agency-wide effort that I'm proud of, we're all proud of, that reflects well on the Commission, and that we're so grateful for. And of course, the amazing thing is this is just one of many initiatives that the agency is driving. it's just one of many auction initiatives that the agency is driving. So I want to thank everyone who's been involved in this. I want to acknowledge the team at the National Broadband Plan who came in as part of that effort in 2009, who worked with the staff at the FCC, some of whom stayed on afterwards. The genesis of this idea is broad. It has many parents. So many people to thank here. Each of you up here, Gary coming back to the FCC for a third run to work with Bill and Ruth and Julie and Bill and Sean and the whole team. On behalf of the public, we thank you for your service. Much work ahead, but thanks to you, thanks to terrific input and engagement from my colleagues, we're well positioned for the work ahead. So with that, thanks. Let's proceed to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. So ordered. And thank you very much. Madam Secretary, we're not done.
No, we are not. One more.
Please.
Okay. Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, the final item on your agenda will be presented by the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau. It is entitled Policies Regarding Mobile Spectrum Holdings.
Ruth and Jim, take your time whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. For as long as the Commission has been licensing mobile spectrum, it has placed limits on the amount of spectrum that can be held by any one entity. The Commission's policies with respect to mobile spectrum holdings have evolved over time as additional spectrum has become available, but there hasn't been a comprehensive review for a decade. While stakeholders have differing views on how the FCC's policies should be updated, almost everyone, including wireless providers of all sizes and public interest groups, have been calling for a review. In light of widespread calls for updating these policies, and in anticipation of the upcoming broadcast television incentive auction and other auctions, the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau recommends that the Commission adopt a notice of proposed rulemaking to review the Commission's mobile spectrum holdings policies. Joining me at the table are Jim Schlichting, Senior Deputy Chief of the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau, Neshe Guldnusberger, Chief of the Wireless Bureau Spectrum and Competition Policy Division, Christina Clearwater, Assistant Chief of the Division, and Monica DeLong, Attorney Advisor in the Division, and Monica will present the item.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, I am pleased to present this notice of proposed rulemaking. This notice initiates a review of the Commission's policies governing mobile spectrum holdings in order to ensure that they fulfill our statutory objectives. Given changes in technology, spectrum availability, and the marketplace since the Commission's last comprehensive review more than a decade ago. The notice requests comment on retaining or modifying the current case-by-case analysis used to evaluate mobile spectrum holdings in the context of transactions and auctions, as well as on bright line limits advocated by some parties. As the slide shows, in the past, the Commission has employed a variety of mobile spectrum aggregation policies and rules, including the cellular cross-ownership interest rules, CMRS spectrum cap, and the current case-by-case analysis. Since 2003, the Commission has employed the case-by-case approach to mobile spectrum acquired through wireless transactions. In 2008, the Commission extended that approach to mobile spectrum acquired through competitive bidding. Since the Commission's last comprehensive review of these issues, the number of spectrum bands used for mobile wireless services has expanded. New innovative service offerings have been rolled out. Increasingly sophisticated devices have been introduced in the marketplace, and consumers have adopted these devices to assess a wide array of bandwidth-intensive applications. As a result, spectrum, a key input in the provision of mobile wireless services, is becoming increasingly critical for all providers. In the last few years, large, medium, and small providers, as well as public interest groups, have raised concerns about current policies governing mobile spectrum holdings and have sought Commission review. The notice seeks comment on the costs and benefits of a case-by-case analysis to consumers, wireless service providers, and others, as well as the overall effectiveness of such an approach in achieving the Commission's public policy objectives. As the slide outlines, the notice also seeks comment on whether we should change our current case-by-case analysis process. The notice asks for comment on possible measures to make the process more transparent, predictable, or better tailored to promote the Commission's goals. In addition, the notice seeks comment on whether the adoption of bright line limits on mobile spectrum holdings would serve the public interest, and if there are any implementation issues regarding the use of such limits to initial licenses acquired through competitive bidding, as well as through the secondary market. As the slide highlights, the notice also seeks comment on certain threshold issues that would need to be considered if the Commission were to adopt any new or modified approach to analyzing mobile spectrum holdings, including establishing the relevant product and geographic markets, updating the spectrum bands that should be included in any evaluation of mobile spectrum holdings, and determining whether and how to make distinctions between spectrum bands. Finally, the notice also takes a look at other implementation issues, such as attribution rules, remedies, and possible transition issues. The Wireless Telecommunications Bureau recommends that the Commission adopt the Notice of Proposed Rulemaking and requests editorial privileges. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all of you. Commissioner McDowell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Although, let me just say at the outset, we may sometimes disagree on substance, I commend Chairman Janikowski on his longstanding ability to maintain an open and constructive dialogue. And as always, I take him at his word, especially today when he explains that his intent for this notice is to create more certainty for the wireless sector. That is a goal we both share, although we may prefer different paths to get there. In short, today we agree on process, but we may respectfully disagree on much of the substance. Even though I have some reservations, I'm taking a small step down this path to examine the Commission's approach to analyze spectrum holdings. I agree that the Commission, and all government agencies for that matter, have an obligation to review regulations from time to time. Moreover, I respect the views of the service providers and civil society groups that have asked us to do this. I also recognize that many wireless carriers expressly asked the Commission to undertake a rulemaking on this issue. Nonetheless, despite being able to find some common ground, I cannot agree with the view that the Commission's current flexible approach, which examines spectrum holdings on a case-by-case basis transparently and within the unique context of each auction or proposed transaction, is broken at its foundation. Further, I question whether these proposals are compatible with the Commission's oft-stated goal of making spectrum more abundant in the mobile marketplace. Spectrum, which ultimately ends up in the hands of our nation's wireless broadband consumers, is the path to all of the new innovations that boost broadband adoption. I wonder about the uncertainty we may be creating by merely releasing this notice contrary to the intent of the item's more enthusiastic proponents. We must always remember that even when government just keeps a watchful eye on markets, our scrutiny has an effect on commerce. Indeed, going further with a one-size-fits-all cap, as suggested in this notice, will likely have unintended negative consequences later. By way of brief background, in 2001, the Commission adopted the current process after determining that spectrum aggregation limits were no longer necessary due to meaningful competition among providers of wireless telecommunication services. Since that time, the Commission has analyzed commercial wireless spectrum holdings on a case-by-case basis, as was explained, oftentimes in close consultation with the Department of Justice. The current approach was created to result in narrowly tailored transaction-specific spectrum remedies that safeguard against anti-competitive behavior, encourage increased investment, and spur the creation of innovative consumer offerings. Our unfettered wireless market is, and always has been, the envy of the world. The growth of the mobile industry over the past decade in particular has been staggering. Just listen to some of the statistics from the Commission's most recent wireless competition report. Since 2001, average minutes of use per subscriber per month increased from 385 minutes to over 700 today. More important, given today's emphasis on broadband, is the growth in mobile data usage. In 2001, analysts estimated that there were between 8 to 10 million mobile internet users. By the end of 2009, 55.8 million users accessed the internet through mobile devices with far more powerful technologies. Additionally, even with such great innovation in the mobile industry, consumers are paying less for their services. Finally, the number of subscribers has increased from 128.4 million to 285.6 million through 2009, since the Commission sunset the spectrum cap in 2001. And please keep in mind that over 90% of American consumers have a choice of at least 5 wireless carriers. Despite this positive and constructive progress, a proposal to cap spectrum holdings is discussed at length, not only in this notice, but also in the companion notice on incentive auctions that we just adopted a few minutes ago. I am concerned that reviving this concept could create unnecessary and harmful market uncertainty. Until now, spectrum caps were a dead and buried 20th century industrial policy relic. I'm further concerned that significant language in the Commission's most recent wireless competition and Section 706 reports, coupled with recent important comments doubting the benefits of usage-based pricing, or what I call pricing freedom, are creating a growing mosaic of evidence that increasingly points to greater regulation of the wireless industry. For these reasons, I encourage interested parties to comment on the potential for negative market effects should the Commission inch or leap down the road toward spectrum caps or other new mandates. Our light touch regulatory policy for mobile technologies, which includes the case-by-case analytical structure for spectrum, has enabled our wireless sector to flourish and continue to lead the world. I'm hopeful that the Commission will not put all of this positive and constructive progress at risk as we explore the myriad options outlined in this notice. As none of us can predict the next disruptive technology or where its spectrum home will be, I caution against inadvertently preventing further innovation and stifling future uses of spectrum based on what's cool at the moment. For instance, these trends include labeling certain spectrum as prime, that is, spectrum that is located below 1 gigahertz, classifying other bands as junk, or prejudging the value of spectrum bands that have yet to be auctioned. History shows us that today's junk is often tomorrow's prime. I take heart in knowing that we are at the beginning of what will surely be a lengthy and complicated process. Hard decisions have yet to be made. With that in mind, I humbly urge my colleagues to keep in mind just how robust our unfettered wireless market is when contemplating its regulatory future. I'm hopeful that rather than imposing artificial limits, We will instead work together to bring additional spectrum to market through auctions for exclusive use licenses to further promote competition and to foster continued innovation and progress in the wireless arena. For these reasons, I vote to approve in part on the process and to have the debate and the discussion, and concur in part on much of the substance. As always, I acknowledge and thank the entire Bureau. Ruth, I noticed we had a cast change here, but you stayed put, along with Sean, of course, who's here for all of these. But I know there are legions of hardworking, wonderfully dedicated, intelligent, and talented professionals behind you. So I can't thank you enough for all of your thoughtfulness and responsiveness to our office, too. So thank you, and thank you to the chairman and to all my colleagues for their work on this notice.
Thank you. Commissioner Clyburn.
There is no question that it is time for the Commission to update its policies on measuring how spectrum aggregation impacts competition in the wireless industry. Our last comprehensive review of these policies occurred in 2003, and since then, we've seen a number of developments in the mobile wireless services. The two most significant are the dramatic increase in demand for wireless services, especially mobile broadband, and the reduction in the number of carriers providing competitive mobile service options for consumers. It is also worth noting that in the spectrum provisions of the Act passed earlier this year, Congress reaffirmed the Commission's authority to, and I quote, adopt rules of general applicability, including rules concerning spectrum aggregation that promote competition. Under Chairman Janikowski's leadership, the Commission staff has been working diligently to improve our understanding about how all relevant aspects of the wireless market impact competitive options for consumers. We have substantially improved our analysis of the market structure in the annual mobile wireless reports. We have also adopted a number of important rules or proposed policies in the areas of universal service reform, tower siting, data roaming, spectrum sharing, wireless backhaul, and, of course, the allocation of more spectrum for commercial mobile services to ensure the Commission is doing what it can to promote rapid deployment of more wireless broadband networks. To ensure the mobile wireless ecosystem continues to offer consumers the highest quality services at affordable prices, we must also review our spectrum aggregation policies to facilitate access by all providers to valuable spectrum resources. Therefore, the NPRM properly identifies several relevant factors the Commission should consider in reviewing properly and revising these policies. I particularly appreciate the analysis and discussion about how the Commission should evaluate different technical characteristics of the spectrum bands allocated for commercial wireless service. This is relevant to whether spectrum below 1 gigahertz should be valued as highly as spectrum above 1 gigahertz. It is also important in determining which currently allocated bands should be included in any spectrum screen should we use it in the future. As we learn from the lack of interoperability in the lower 700 megahertz band, just because the Commission auctions a spectrum band does not necessarily mean it becomes immediately available and suitable to offer services to the public. It is important that we review these policies in a timely fashion and take into account any considerations that could help us design our voluntary incentive auctions. I thank Ruth Milkman, Jim Schlichting, Nessie Gwindesberger. Okay, close enough. Thank you for forgiving me. And Maria Kirby for their detailed briefing. I also wish to commend Christina Clearwater and Monica DeLong, along with other staff members who worked hard to produce an excellent item. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Clyburn. Commissioner Rosenworcel.
As we've just heard, it's been nearly a decade since the Commission put in place its current approach to spectrum holdings. 10 years ago, the agency eliminated the spectrum cap in favor of a case-by-case analysis of how much spectrum any one entity can hold. A decade is a lifetime in the world of wireless. and perhaps even several generations. The mobile transformation that has taken place over this time has been built on a foundation of access to spectrum. But as the wireless revolution reaches new heights, the demand for airwaves has escalated, and the call to revisit our policies regarding spectrum holdings has grown louder. Today, the Commission answers this call. Section 309J of the Communications Act directs the agency to promote economic opportunity and competition in the wireless industry. That means rules that encourage a competitive marketplace with opportunities for incumbents as well as new entrants. Our policies should foster an environment that will allow businesses to innovate and grow. At the same time, we must keep a steady eye on the larger context in which this spectrum holdings review is taking place. We are in the middle of an unprecedented push to identify new spectrum for wireless broadband services. As part of this effort, Congress has entrusted the Commission to conduct incentive auctions and then use the proceeds from these auctions to support a nationwide wireless broadband network for first responders. It is imperative that we not lose sight of this goal. Thank you to the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau for its work on this rulemaking. I look forward to the record that develops.
Thank you. Commissioner Pai.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I share the concerns of my colleagues and many stakeholders that today's process for evaluating carrier spectrum holdings is flawed. In my view, our framework has failed to keep pace with the evolving marketplace and is simply unpredictable. On the first point, the evolving marketplace. Our spectrum screen currently fails to account for all spectrum suitable for mobile broadband. This includes spectrum in the broadcast radio service, or BRS, and educational broadband service, or EBS, that companies like Clearwire are using today to provide 4G service across America. And our approach to spectrum attribution assumes that one company gains de facto control of another even if it holds no more than 10% equity. Together, these factors ensure that our current process for evaluating spectrum holdings consistently understates competition in the marketplace. On the second point, predictability. Our approach to evaluating carrier spectrum holdings creates needless regulatory uncertainty. As carriers plan their investments to meet consumer demand, they need to know the rules of the road, namely, which purchases will trigger the spectrum screen and which won't. Unfortunately, that is not the case today. Instead, we only consider whether to adjust the screen on an ad hoc, transaction-by-transaction basis. Although there is substantial room for improvement when it comes to the spectrum screen, there's little consensus when it comes to identifying particular problems, let alone specific solutions. Some think that the screen includes too little spectrum, others too much. Some favor the imposition of a hard cap, others support a more flexible, case-by-case approach. Some want to weigh different spectrum bands differently, and others believe that taking that step would be counterproductive. I could go on, but you get the point. It is for this reason that I find it curious that outside of the attribution issue, today's notice of proposed rulemaking contains no notice of proposed rules. In fact, the word proposed does not appear in the document, nor do we reach any tentative conclusions. We simply ask a lot of questions about where things stand, which is typically what we would do in a notice of inquiry. While I, of course, support soliciting comment as we begin this journey, I think the better approach here would have been to ask for input on where we intend to go. The public is better served if attention can be focused on proposed rules, and the FCC's ultimate decisions are better informed by direct as opposed to general public engagement. But since this remains a notice of proposed rulemaking, and since we may well adopt rules for mobile spectrum holdings around the same time that we adopt rules for the broadcast incentive auction, I want to highlight the linkage between these two proceedings. It is critical that the incentive auction be a success, and that, in turn, requires vigorous participation and competition for spectrum in the forward auction. I am thus skeptical of any steps that would depress participation in the auction, such as tightening the spectrum screen, adopting a hard cap on spectrum holdings, or imposing requirements that would enable the Commission to second-guess how wireless operators run their networks and thus reduce the value of the spectrum that they use. I'm particularly concerned about two consequences that would likely result. First, constricting the spectrum screen will be bad for public safety. By law, the net revenues of a successful incentive auction must be deposited into the Public Safety Trust Fund. In other words, the more money we raise through that auction, the more money that will be available for FirstNet. And given the high costs of rural deployment, raising substantial funds is especially critical if states like Kansas and West Virginia are going to become a part of the nationwide public safety broadband network. On the other hand, artificially depressing demand in the auction will lower net revenues and thus reduce the amount of money received by public safety. Second, narrowing the spectrum screen will aggravate the spectrum crunch. Unlike in normal auctions, there is a direct relationship in an incentive auction between aggregate auction demand and the amount of spectrum that will be made available for mobile broadband. The more demand for spectrum in the auction, the more spectrum will be sold. On the other hand, a stricter spectrum screen would lower overall auction demand, and thus less spectrum will be made available for mobile broadband. In conclusion, we have the opportunity to make some real improvements in our spectrum screen. I look forward to reviewing the record that will be developed in the coming months and working through these issues with my colleagues. And I hope that we will make the right decision. Considering the stakes associated with the incentive auctions, we should, at a minimum, do no harm. My thanks to the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau, Chief Milkman, Deputy Chief Schlichting, Christina, Neshe, and Monica for that presentation. I look forward to working with you and my colleagues to make sure we get it right. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So as recently as 2007, there was no iPhone, no Android phones, no tablets, no app stores. Back then, only about 9 million Americans, or about 4% of the mobile market, had smartphones. Today, the majority of mobile subscribers have smartphones, and those phones generate a huge amount of traffic. They're also generating innovation and jobs and bringing real benefit to our economy. But the point for this proceeding is how much has changed not only since 2007, but 2002, in the last 10 years. If you think back to 2002 and what was going on in our mobile marketplace and the role it played in our economy, a very different world. Well, we've seen these major changes. The FCC hasn't reviewed its policies for mobile spectrum holdings in that entire period, in that decade period. And stakeholders from throughout the mobile ecosystem have increasingly been saying it's time for a fresh look, that we can take steps to increase certainty and predictability for the marketplace. So today we launch a rulemaking to review the FCC's spectrum holding policies and make changes as appropriate in order to enable a healthy and competitive wireless marketplace with clear and predictable rules of the road. Getting these policies right is key to facilitating efficiency, enhancing secondary market transactions, and promoting vibrant competition, both of which are necessary to drive the massive mobile investment and innovation we need to grow our economy. It's another part of our multi-pronged strategy to ensure that the U.S. maintains and extends the global leadership in mobile services and innovation that we've regained in the last few years. This proceeding will consider a wide range of viewpoints. We are not prejudging the outcome. Launching this proceeding does not reflect a change in our views. As I've said before, efficiency, improving spectrum transactions can certainly be consistent with a competitive market and the public interest. Nothing in this notice changes that. Over the past 3 years, we've approved hundreds of transactions involving more than 1,000 licenses, while also significantly reducing the review time for major transactions. We've also shown that we recognize when transactions require conditions or spectrum divestitures to preserve competition. And when we concluded that a proposed transaction simply didn't serve the public interest, we said so. Competition is the lifeblood of our free market economy. Indifference to competition isn't good for innovation, job creation, or economic growth. Now, there's been one suggestion that instead of the rulemaking notice we issued today, we begin with the notice of inquiry. This would needlessly add red tape, slow roll the review, and delay possible improvements to current policies. This is an important notice of proposed rulemaking. It is appropriate, timely, and necessary. It will contribute to our goal of increasing certainty and predictability in the space. It will contribute to our goal of U.S. leadership in mobile. So thank you to Ruth and Jim and the entire team for your hard work on this while you're juggling so many things. On behalf of all of us, we appreciate it very much. And I thank each of my colleagues for their contributions to this item, and look forward to working together to take steps to increase certainty and predictability and help drive a successful mobile future. With that, let's proceed to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Approve in part, concur in part.
The ayes have it. So ordered. And thank you. Now that concludes the substantive items that we have today. Let me ask my colleagues if they have any announcements. I see some head nodding. Commissioner McDowell, why don't you?
We would like to welcome a new law clerk. Henry, you want to stand up? This is a rite of passage, a little bit of hazing here. You have to stand up. Henry is joining us. He is currently at Catholic University's Law School, where he will graduate this December. He also has a master's degree in education from Indiana University. At the Wendell School of Education, now, is that a relative or is this a coincidence? 2 L's versus 1, I guess, but okay. And his undergrad degree from University of Arkansas, so he's a Razorback. He has all sorts of academic honors and merit-based scholarships at Arkansas. He was student body president. He has a very impressive resume, having started his career in higher education at Johns Hopkins University, then later George Washington University, and has since worked at the law firms Dowlonis and Wilkinson Barker. So we want to welcome him, as well as welcome back Emmanuel Garia, and who's in our office currently, and Tyler Cox, who's working remotely from Boulder, Colorado, and aren't we all jealous of that? We have another law clerk who will be introduced at the October meeting, assuming she can make it. So, how's that for a teaser? Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Clyburn, do you?
Thank you. I, too, would like to introduce my fall intern group. And if you would stand when I call your name. Louis DiLorenzo of Queens, New York, is currently a second-year law student at Georgetown University. He is a committed musician, which we needed that infusion in our office. Oh, I might have offended a few people in my office by saying that, but still heavily involved in the New York music community. Louis has an extensive background in entertainment and digital media and is eager to learn more about the telecommunications space. So welcome. Brad Ham is a third-year law student at George Washington University. He grew up in Dix Hills, New York. Sorry about that. I need bifocals. And majored in business at Tulane. Brad is interested in media and in entertainment law and previously held jobs at NBCU, Ion Media Networks, and the Oxygen Network. He also has a passion for politics and public policy. Surprise, surprise, being in D.C., and worked as a legal intern in the U.S. House of Representatives. Joseph Dvorak, I can't say it, Dvorak, is a distance award winner for our office. He joins us from Albuquerque, New Mexico, where he's a third-year law student at the University of New Mexico. Joe grew up in El Paso, Texas, but has worked on both sides of the country at a law firm in California and, yes, on Capitol Hill. He has experience in administrative law and public policy and is excited about the opportunity to work in our office, right? This fall. Just wanted to affirm. And not here, but we, if he is able to be here at the next meeting, is Jonathan Quigley, a third-year law student at Catholic University. You know, we had to have one because they rule the world, rule the FCC. Silence. Anyway, where he is concentrating in communications law. Originally from Long Island, New York, Jonathan lives here in Washington, D.C. with his wife into children. Again, welcome to all of you. They are doing fine work, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate you allowing me the opportunity to introduce them to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Commissioner Rosenworcel.
So I am pleased to announce that Alex Hohn-Sarek has joined my office as Policy Director. He's going to have responsibility in the Office for Media and Technology Issues, and he comes to us from the Department of Commerce, where he served as Deputy General Counsel. At the Department of Commerce, he had primary responsibility for strategic initiatives, including internet privacy, security, technology, and intellectual property matters. Before joining the Department of Commerce, he served as Senior Counsel for the Competitiveness, Innovation, and Export Promotion Subcommittee and the Consumer Protection, Product Safety, and Insurance Subcommittee of the Senate Commerce Committee. And even earlier than that, he served as counsel to the Communications Technology and Internet Subcommittee. And earlier still on Capitol Hill, he served as counsel to Senator Barbara Boxer. Before entering public service, he worked in the Washington office of Latham & Watkins and in the New York office of Sullivan & Cromwell. He also served as a law clerk on the United States District Court of Maryland, and he's a graduate of the University of Chicago and the University of California, Los Angeles Law School. He is smart, savvy, a good friend, and the loss to the Department of Commerce is definitely the FCC's gain. So thank you, Alex. And then I just want to note that with his arrival, we have a departure. So I want to thank Holly Sauer for her work in my office and the chairman for letting me borrow her for a spell. Holly right now is on a well-deserved vacation. But some months ago, she stepped into my office and she stepped up immediately. She is an absolute dynamo, and she has an encyclopedic command of media issues before this agency. So she's going to be heading back to the Media Bureau to a new opportunity, and I am really grateful to her for her time in my office, and I am grateful that I can also call her a friend.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Pai?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I have two announcements. This morning, I wanted to take a minute to introduce our two new law clerks, Joe Calishone and Taima Rahimich. We'll start with Joe. Joe is a son of the Deep South. He grew up in Northern Virginia. And he graduated from the University of Virginia, where he majored in Foreign Affairs and East Asian Studies. Then, having not seen the light, apparently, he moved back to the Washington area and worked at the World Bank for 3 years before enrolling at George Mason, where he is now a 3L. This past summer, Joe worked at the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. It's come to my attention that Joe is fluent in Mandarin, German, and Russian. However, he is a little bit of an underachiever because he can only read French. Comme ci, comme ça. We are very glad to have him here. Taima was born in Bosnia and Herzegovina, not just one or the other, and moved to the United States when she was 12 years old. She attended the University of Georgia, where she majored in journalism and comparative literature. After college, she became a paralegal in a small bankruptcy and family law firm in Alpharetta, Georgia. And this experience led her to decide to go to law school. She's currently a 2L at George Washington. This past summer, she worked at the Department of Justice, and we are pleased, among other reasons, that she has seen the wisdom of leaving the executive branch and coming to an independent agency where the real work really gets done. We've also learned around the office that she is a professional basketball fan, in particular, a fan of the Miami Heat. Now, I will note that this might lead some to question her commitment to the public interest, convenience, and necessity, but I'm confident that over time, we can lead her to the true path. Both Joe and Taima have already made substantial contributions to our office, and I look forward to continuing to work with them in the weeks to come, and I especially appreciate the 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. schedule they kindly and voluntarily agreed to abide by this fall. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Let me join my colleagues in welcoming each of the new staff members and clerks. The FCC is just a great place to be. We're lucky to have you, and I know you'll enjoy your time here. I want to take a minute to say a temporary goodbye, and I stress temporary, to my chief counsel, Cherise Smith, who is taking maternity leave. Cherise, first of all, congratulations on this wonderful, wonderful time in your life. Of course, as many of us here know, this is Cherise's second child, second at the FCC. As a parent of 3 kids, I would say good luck. You have no idea how lucky you were with Jess Morgan. Now, the good news is, as I know and as all of you know who've worked with Sharice, there's nothing that Sharice can't do. The challenges the rest of us struggle to juggle, Sharice handles effortlessly with ease and grace. Sharice has been an indispensable part of my team since my very first day as chairman, 3.5 years ago. And she served as my chief counsel and senior legal advisor since the beginning of the year. Sharice brings, this was evident from the very first time I met you, the perfect skill set to the job, and we've seen this just repeatedly over the last few years. Sharice is a natural consensus builder who's earned the trust of everyone in the building and everyone in our space and sector, for that matter. At the same time, and we've all experienced this, Sharice is an iron-willed leader who runs a tight ship and gets things done. Sharice, so many accomplishments so far. Bill Shaw cramming, VRS, the new online disclosure rules for public file. These are all policies that directly benefit every American citizen and consumer, and none of them would have happened without your hard work, along with many, many other accomplishments. I really, we'd be here all day if I listed all the amazing things that we've been able to get done because of Sharice. I do want to tell one story that provides a sense of Sharice's commitment and how lucky we've been to have Sharice as part of our team. Back in 2009, in late December, this was just a few months into our term, there was a retransmission dispute. Actually, there were multiple retransmission disputes ahead of December 31st deadline. I think Fox and Time Warner was one, and Mediacom and Sinclair was the other. And at her own initiative, Sharice canceled her holiday plans, her vacation plans, to come into the agency every day and do everything that she could to help resolve these disputes with a focus on the American viewers who stood to get the short end of the stick for New Year's Day bowl games and other programming. With the support of the Media Bureau and others who worked hard as well, there was a resolution. Disaster was averted. But the important thing about this was it's just one example of how Sharice has prioritized work and getting things done with a constant focus on the people we serve. So Sharice, thank you so much. We will miss you. Hurry back. We need you. While Sharice is away, I'm pleased to announce that Elizabeth Andrian will be filling her role in our office. I can assure you that this will not be an NFL replacement ref situation. Elizabeth is well known to so many of you, already has proven that she can replace the irreplaceable, taking over for Paul Dessau at our Office of Strategic Planning. Elizabeth also did a fantastic job as the general manager of our Information Needs of Communities report, and Elizabeth has a long track record of success and accomplishment here at the agency. So, Elizabeth, thank you for stepping up. We're very glad to welcome you to the chairman's office. Thank you also to John Chambers. I don't know if he's in the room, but John is stepping up to fill Elizabeth's position at our Office of Strategic Planning. It's been a real pleasure working with John on multiple issues since he joined the FCC staff earlier this year. With John's extraordinary analytical thinking and absolutely perfect background, I'm completely confident John will do an excellent job as head of OSP. I only have one more thing to say at this very important time of the year. Go Nationals. And if my colleagues have no further announcements, Madam Secretary, can you please announce the date of the next commission meeting?
The next agenda meeting of the Federal Communications Commission is Wednesday, October 17th, 2012.
Thank you, and we are adjourned. Take your time. Thanks for your patience. In fact, I'm going to get some water. If there are any more cups. There are no cups? All right. I'm not going to get water. No, don't worry about it, Mark. Forget the water. Forget the water. If I'm going to drink, it's got to be stronger than that. Let me, just while you're sitting down, I have an announcement about the Mobility Fund auction that took place yesterday. It's been quite a 48 hours for our auctions team at the FCC. In addition to today's watershed incentive auction vote yesterday, we completed the first of its kind reverse auction for the new Mobility Fund. While the results are still being validated, we now expect this will be a major success. Mobile, of course, as you've heard me say many, many times, has become essential for economic growth, job creation, education, healthcare, and more. That's why the President set a goal of bringing advanced mobile broadband to at least 98% of Americans. And it's why in last year's overhaul of the Universal Service Fund, the Commission made mobile Internet access an express universal service goal for the very first time. It's a major step that has sometimes gotten overlooked in the many things we did in USF reform and the Connect America Fund. But for the first time in American history, mobility, ubiquitous access is a formal universal service goal. And the Mobility Fund was the program we adopted to implement it. If you remember, we adopted reverse auctions as the auction design, as the way to distribute the funds, the first time that reverse auctions have ever been used. And as I said, we expect this will be a major success. The design and implementation of the auction, as I said, the first ever reverse auction to distribute universal service support, was a landmark achievement. Also proof of our auctions team ability to juggle several big, complex tasks at the same time. And so there are some people from the Wireless Bureau here on our auctions team. I see Jim, and there are others. I do want to thank you all for just tremendous and excellent work. We will be announcing the final results of the auction in the coming days, and then carriers can get to work investing and spreading the benefits of mobile broadband to the places in the country where mobile is still lacking. And let's do some questions. Neil, which way do you want to go?
Mr. Chairman, Paul Kirby at TR Daily. You said it was surprising that some people question the unlicensed, what you're proposing as far as unlicensed in the item. Are you surprised that the Commissioner probably had a question about whether or not you were truthfully fulfilling or correctly fulfilling the Act's intentions regarding unlicensed, which is what he seems to be suggesting?
Well, just a few points about the incentive auction vote today. The first point I'd make is that what the discussion and the vote and the comments reflected was broad bipartisan consensus on moving forward with this groundbreaking, complex incentive auction idea. Overwhelmingly, there was broad bipartisan consensus on a complex, important, challenging proceeding that will make a very big difference for our mobile future. The second point that I'd make is that the work that's reflected in the notice reflects a level of expertise and sophistication that I'm very proud of. We had tremendous engagement and input from world-leading economists, world-leading auction experts, world-leading engineers, and the staff of the FCC. You know them. They've been working on this around the clock for a long time, and the work is just excellent. I did want to thank Commissioner McDowell for taking a minute to talk about the collaborative open process that we ran in this proceeding as we have in others. Now, there is a disagreement on innovation and Wi-Fi-like unlicensed uses. There's no disagreement that our duty and obligation is to implement the Spectrum Act.
Commissioner Pai brought this up specifically about the relationship between the incentive auctions notice and the Spectrum Holdings notice, in that if the Spectrum Holdings notice is, designed or goes forward in such a way that would depress or disencourage participation in the broadcast auctions because of the weight given to spectrum below 1 gigahertz, that could potentially undermine a lot of the laudable goals that you and the other commissioners talked about for the forward auctions of the broadcast spectrum. How are these two proposals going to work together going forward, and how are those timelines going to be ironed out so that that potential outcome doesn't happen?
I don't see that as an issue. We need more spectrum for all carriers. We're committed to that. The statute, Communications Act, properly requires us to focus on competition, the lifeblood of our free enterprise economy. We're committed to doing both.
Thanks, Brooks Politico. There's still, broadcasters obviously have concerns about, how this is going to work out. Can you talk a little bit about, you talked a lot about how this is going to be a transparent process, and there's the Broadcaster Learn program in there. Can you explain a little bit more about how you're going to be able to convince them to give up significant amounts of the frequencies that they now use?
Well, this is a very important development, of course, in the process of having a successful incentive auction. There's no question that the success of the incentive auction depends on broadcaster participation. As I said before, you've heard me, Brooks, and as we've heard more and more from broadcasters, we're well aware that there are many broadcasters who are not going to seriously consider this. We completely understand and expect that there will continue to be a vibrant broadcast industry after the auction. It's also quite clear that particularly in major markets, there are many stations that are interested, that are looking carefully. They have a lot of questions, as of course they should. And in the process that we've already started through workshops and other things, but this notice today takes our efforts to the next level. Because now we'll have, our Media Bureau will have, others will have a concrete reverse auction proposal that we can discuss with broadcasters, the broadcasters can evaluate, and where we fully expect to get input from broadcasters who are considering the option on how to design it to achieve our goal of maximizing broadcaster participation.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. Todd Shields, Bloomberg News. A bit of a change of pace. On the issue of prison phone rates, can you describe the degree of your agency or your office's involvement now and what are likely next steps?
Well, that's something the staff continues to prepare next steps on that, and beyond that, I don't have anything to add. Okay. But if you want another question, Todd.
Yeah, I'm trying to evoke what you said on the Twitter feed, more or less. Is the agency looking at this or no?
As I said, the staff is looking at it. I've said that. They're preparing next steps, but beyond that,
thank you.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. Katie Bachman from Adweek, and Brooks took my question, so I'm going to ask something really simple, which is, can you just tell me a little bit about how big this proposal is, how many pages, and also one of the things that I'm a little curious about, because everybody's talking about how complex this is, and now we've got a date, right, June 30th, 2014. What happens in the middle? And I guess Commissioner Pai was talking about how that timeline is, and I'm wondering if you could flesh that out a little for me.
Sure. So we're targeting 2014 for the auction. As I said, and as you heard the Bureau said, we put out a comprehensive proposal that's designed to get full and rapid feedback from all stakeholders. So that's what happens next. People who are very familiar with the FCC's process, we have a notice, there's a comment cycle, people will submit comments. It's not just a paper process. We'll be using workshops and various means of engaging with all stakeholders. We have a common objective as a country, which is to take care of our invisible infrastructure, make sure that we free up spectrum for mobile broadband. This is a very significant challenge for the country, but it's important to recognize that it's the kind of challenge that we want because it's a challenge that comes from too much demand for spectrum, too much data use on mobile. That's happening because we've regained global leadership in mobile. So we'd much rather have this challenge than a challenge that we were talking about 4 years ago, which is, wow, there's more mobile innovation in other countries. We are leading the world in mobile innovation. We're leading the world in 4G infrastructure. This proposal on incentive auctions and other steps we're taking are all designed to make sure that we continue to lead the world for many years to come.
Thanks. So how big is the document?
Why don't I let the staff, when they come up, answer that? And thank you all. Thank you for coming.
Okay, we'll now start the staff portion of the press conference. Perhaps begin with incentive auctions.
Paul Kirby with TR Daily. Gary, I had a couple brief questions. One is, are you expecting the document out today, or is Monday probably more likely?
I think it's within a week.
Within a week?
Yeah, within a week.
Okay, so
Probably.
Today is unlikely?
Today
just
is
for
unlikely,
planning.
but there are some edits to run through, but it's not a long time.
Okay, and then in looking at the summary...
And the answer is 150 pages.
150 pages, okay. In looking at the summary, it talks about what would be freed up or what's being proposed to be freed up for unlicensed, or what would be allowed for unlicensed, rather. Where in the spectrum would the nationwide unlicensed band be? In other words...
I think I can't go beyond right now what's in the public notice generally, but I think the public notice does talk about the band plan and the guard bands.
Right.
Okay.
So that would be the nationwide would be the guard bands.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understand that. Okay, thank you.
Bill?
I'm good.
There was some mention of radio astronomy, of moving those guys. There's been a lot of mention of moving them in the past. They have special issues, of course. I mean, how do you get them to move?
Well, one interesting thing about the innovative band plan we talked about, and that was up on the wall there, doesn't require them to move, because Channel 37 is kind of a buffer. Both the radio astronomers and the medical telemetry people are in Channel 37. Now, we do ask one of the other alternatives. Again, as I said in my statement, in my remarks, was that we raised the question of whether they have to move. But one interesting thing about the band plan is that Channel 37 would basically remain in place between the uplink and the downlink.
Hi, thanks for taking questions. Todd Shields with Bloomberg News. I'm trying to get a count on how many, in your initial proposal that you all flashed up on the screen there, how many TV channels are you hoping to get from the auction? I guess they're in 2 to 51 now, with the exception of 37. But you were mentioning, I think, should I say more? Is that enough for you to answer the question?
Well, I think the couple of answers to the question, and Bill Lake will keep me honest, is that we're really talking about from channels 20 to 51.
Talking about channels 20 to 51 being what, devoted to wireless use?
No. Okay, those are the UHF channels that are involved. We are not and will not at this point, prognosticate how many television stations are likely to move or not move. What our job is to construct an auction which makes it relatively easy for broadcasters to participate. But whether or not they participate, I think, as a number of the commissioners have stated, is a voluntary issue, is a voluntary question. And so that's going to be up to them. Our job is to construct an auction and an auction process and an auction design process which will make that decision relatively easy for them to take or not to take.
So you don't have any estimate or benchmark today for how many megahertz or airways or channels that you're going to clear through this process?
We do not.
Okay.
Bill?
Just really simple. I want to know how big this thing is and how complex it is, and number of pages, and when are people going to get a look at it?
They're going to look at it within hopefully early next week, no later than a week, and it's long. I don't know. Hopefully, if we've done our job, it's readable and people can understand it, and it is approximately 150 pages long.
Hi, Paul Barbagallo with BNA. I just wanted to clarify one point you made during your presentation. You mentioned on the white spaces portion, you mentioned that these measures taken together would make a substantial amount of spectrum available for unlicensed use, including a substantial portion that would be available on a uniform nationwide basis for the first time. Now, is this the pre-existing white spaces allocation?
What we're talking about here is there are white spaces, and Julie has taught me to tell the difference between unlicensed and white spaces. Okay, so using the more generic term, unlicensed. Okay, the white spaces that are involved will still be available, but they will be subject to the repacking that's there. And so there may or may not be, depending upon the market, more or less white space availability. But as a result of the band plan, we're talking about the opportunity or ability for additional unlicensed spectrum. And what I specifically mentioned in the presentation was, and a number of the commissioners also talked about, was availability of unlicensed and guard bands, which are a necessary result of the band plan. We also talked about allowing unlicensed in Channel 37 as a proposal for the first time. And we also talked about allowing white spaces in what were previously reserved 2 channels for wireless mics. Julie?
Great. All right. I might just clarify one thing.
Yeah, sure.
I might just clarify in response to the question about the channels. The UHF band currently is channels 14 to 51. The VHF band is channels 2 to 13. Anyone on any of those channels will be eligible to contribute spectrum to the auction. But again, the answer to the question of what do we expect is we don't have a target number at this point.
All right, thanks a lot. So are we ready for wireless at this point?
Can I
clarify one thing, just to make sure I understand? So is it correct? In addition, then, Gary, in addition to obviously the unlicensed will be, TV white spaces will be subject to the repacking. What's available? And you said, in addition, there'd be nationwide unlicensed in the guard bands on a nationwide basis. Also, the proposal would be to have white spaces, is it correct, in channel 37 and the two channels that are currently reserved for wireless mics?
I should let Julie say this. It's unlicensed in channel 37, but there have to be exclusion zones around radio astronomy and wireless medical telemetry.
Okay.
And I think, Julie can correct me if I'm wrong, but the TV white spaces technology, those devices can work across the TV bands, whether it's in white spaces or in the new guard bands or in channel 37.
Okay. Yeah. And then the bands currently for wireless mics, would the proposal be to allow the wireless mics to continue to be there and also allow the unlicensed separate from wireless mics?
Right. So we would have wireless mics, whether licensed or unlicensed, continue to be able to operate in the TV bands, white spaces.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, one more. Can I ask one? Okay. I know there's been some discussion about broadcasters sharing the same frequencies. I mean, is there any discussion in NPRM about other wireless uses? I mean, can you auction shared spectrum too for wireless gadgets? I mean, is there something about that, like in the PCAST report?
What we're doing in the notice here is really following the congressional options that are in the statute. Okay, what the statute says is for the incentive auction, a broadcaster will have at least three options. Okay, one of them would be to sell the 6 megahertz back in the incentive auction. Another would be for two television stations to share a channel, therefore freeing up one. And a third would be for a station which is currently on UHF to go to VHF, thereby freeing up the UHF. Okay, we do potentially ask in the NPRM about some other options. I mentioned one of them in my presentation, and that is for a broadcast station willing to accept additional interference. But those are the options that we're talking about. Bill, any?
I'd just add that the item that will explore the follow-up on the PCAST report recommendations is the small cell 3.5 gigahertz item, which the chairman has said will be coming by the end of the year.
Okay, can we move to the wireless item at this point? Any questions on that one?
That's the Spectrum screen?
Mobile Spectrum Holdings.
Yeah, well, what do we call the Spectrum screen?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it just flew out of my head.
All right, Paul, go ahead. I just wanted to confirm the NPRM seeks comment on whether to retain the current screen or move to new bright line limits. And I just wanted to clarify whether the item itself will include any concrete proposals as far as what those new bright line limits might be, or in particular bands, or perhaps across the entire spectrum of spectrum.
So the current limit is 1/3,
right? And
that's what the notice asks about, 1/3.
Right, but in moving to a new bright line limit, or I mean, is the notice basically saying it should be this, or could be this? It
really, as I think one of the commissioners or the chairman mentioned, there are a lot of questions in here and no specific proposals or tentative conclusions.
Okay, thank you.
Paul?
Might that item be out today?
Yes,
okay,
that is our hope.
Thank you.
So as I asked the chairman, it seems like there's the potential for spectrum below 1 gigahertz to be given greater weight than spectrum above 1 gigahertz. Mm-hmm. How, in your view, might that interact with the auction of the broadcast spectrum and carriers' potential desire to acquire broadcast spectrum, which is obviously below 1 gigahertz?
I think it's just really premature to talk about that until we get a record and the Commission decides what to do. I think it was clear from people's remarks today that the Commission will be keeping an eye on the interaction between the Mobile Spectrum Holdings proceeding and the incentive auction, and that the desire is to have some more certainty and clarity in advance of the auction.
Brooks, did you come back? No, don't worry. All right. Thank you, everybody, very much. This concludes the press conference.
Good job.